Welcome to the Streets Won't Forget podcast. I'm Dodzi, your host, and today I'm joined by Louie and Keelan here for an episode where we're going to talk about transfers because it's that season. Transfer window started, and my team's been active. Um, Everyone's kind of surprised at the moment in terms of Arsenal's activity. Other teams have been active. Man United have been active recently. Liverpool made a sign today. Aston Villa. We're gonna get all into that, but if you're listening to this on Spotify, give us a follow, and if you're listening, watch this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and engage as you're watching the video. Whatever thoughts come to mind, drop them in the comments. We love the engagement. Okay, so first place to start, as I've said, has to be Arsenal, right? Not because I support Arsenal, but because Arsenal are clearly the most active team in the window at the moment. Only one player officially through the door at the moment, Kai Havertz. But it looks like Declan Rice, £105 million. It looks like that's going to get completed this week. Also, looks like Jurrien Timber is going to be completed some point this week. Now, guys, I want to ask you both, what do you actually think about this window? Despite Arsenal spending a lot of money, right? Come to you first as you're an Arsenal fan, right? Is these three signings, despite the money's been spent, does it improve? In fact, what are your thoughts? What is your thoughts actually? Forget even
Um,
what's your
yeah, like with the signings, it's a weird one because, other than Rice, you're not really sure if these players start, and yeah, it's just a whole rotation thing. I'm just not sure if that's how you sort of win trophies. Really, like you kind of most successful teams do just play the sort of same guys week in week out, and it's just I've struggled to see how they're going to rotate sort of between all those players. Yeah, I think like Timber he's versatile. He plays sort of two positions. I think it's a positive sign in the fact that yeah, just sort of anyone that can really play two positions is obviously like quite nice. Havertz, no idea what's like. Yeah, I don't understand it at all. To be honest, like in terms of how much money was spent on him as well. Yeah, I don't really understand it. But just with regards to sort of what went wrong last year and how those signings sort of help us change that. Like I think Rice, 100%, that helps massively with that. But yeah, with Timber and Havertz, I'm not really sure sort of how they help at this point in time, to be honest.
fair enough? You're skeptical. You're skeptical.
Yeah.
Um, Louis, what do you make of Keane's comments actually, and also
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt there. I kind of knew what you was going to say. Just in terms of my thoughts as well as talking about Keelan's as well. Um, First thing first, I think as Arsenal, like not as an Arsenal fan, as a neutral, and someone who obviously talks to a lot of Arsenal fans, I can see why you guys are skeptical. I understand, like on the surface, Havertz hasn't really kicked on at Chelsea. He's not someone at Chelsea who I've really rated. There's another player like that who we'll get onto very shortly. Um, but yeah, I've never really rated him at Chelsea, but I've said a few times I feel like he's been misprofiled. And if there's one thing Arteta's proven over his last couple of years at Arsenal is that he's extremely good at profiling players in terms of getting them in the best positions for their attributes. And I kind of see the vision now. I've thought about it a bit more. I think Timber offers versatility, not just in terms of positions, but in terms of how you can play as well, like formation wise. Um, Obviously, Zinchenko is an inverted fullback, so he inverts into the midfield. And he was injured for a large stage of last year. He's had injury problems for the last 4 years of his career. Timber can do that, but on the other side. So, and to be honest, I reckon if you played him left back and inverted, he'd be fine as well. He's that technically good. He's one of my favourite players in world football. I really wanted United to sign him, but I guess that the money's elsewhere. So yeah, I think that's a great signing in terms of also as well. It means you don't have to see Rob Holding. Like if Saliba or Gabriel get injured, it means you can kind of play Timber or White, probably White as a centre back and Timber out at right back because of the vertical challenges of Timber. But then we said that about Martinez as well, and he's probably been one of the pound for pound one of the best defenders in the league this season. Obviously Declan Rice, phenomenal player, another one of my favorite players in the world, which is why I'm really pissed off and jealous, man, because those two guys, Rice and Timber, they're two guys I wanted in United shirts, but you can't have everything. And then Havertz, I kind of feel like so when Arteta was assistant at City, obviously they played that 4-3-3, but they played Silva and De Bruyne, who aren't natural eights. They're both number 10s by trade, as number eights. And I kind of feel like in this situation, it's going to be very similar. You've got two direct wingers, like what City had. I know you've said before, Dodzi, about the differences between Timber and Walker, but that season, Kyle Walker played inverted a lot. I remember there was a big segment on Match of the Day, because it was the first time we'd seen that in England in terms of a fullback coming into midfield. So I feel like he's trying to emulate that, and I feel like in this situation, Odegaard's going to be more like David Silva, in terms of a little bit deeper, dictating play, and Havertz is going to be the De Bruyne, probably less creative, but more in terms of attacking the box and getting into attacking positions. So I think I can see the vision in terms of what he's trying to do. I think I can anyway. Obviously, I can't guarantee that until it's done, but I think it could prove to be three top signings. Where it leaves Arsenal in terms of you have to compete now, and you have to compete on all fronts as well, especially, what's that, 200 million windows now in a row?
I
Or
don't
there
think
or thereabouts.
is it. What, 150 and then like 55 last year? Or no, 100 million and 200 million this year?
I think since Arteta's been in, have you guys? Yeah, you guys have had the highest net spend since he's been in, right? Or well, other than Chelsea.
If the right signing goes through, then yeah.
And it's looking like 2 of the past 3 seasons will be the highest spenders in the summer.
Yeah.
So for me, there's no excuses in terms of bigger fish to fry this year. You have to compete for at least 3 trophies. You have to be there and amongst it. I mean, we've seen United compete for 2 trophies really, with a much worse squad, much more stretched. So I think Arsenal have to compete. I expect Final 4 in the Champions League. I expect to take it to at least a final day in the Premier League, and I expect you to be in and amongst it in both cups as well. No World Cup this year to disrupt things either. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fair. Arsenal should be competing on all fronts this season. Like we've done well to compete last year on the Prem front because
I agree.
So Liverpool and City have been doing that. But interesting in what you said about Havertz. For you think he's been misprofiled at Chelsea? Like in what sense? Because I feel like at Chelsea he's been played in quite a few positions, though. Like, and he's just not really done it in any of those positions, and that's obviously why I'm a bit worried about him coming to Arsenal. Yeah.
He has played in lots of positions, but in different systems. So when he was at Leverkusen, he operated best just off the striker, kind of like a Thomas Muller, where he can attack the box and use the space in and around the edge of the box to get onto the end of second balls and cutbacks. Whereas I think at Chelsea he's been used more of like a striker. And to be honest, for the most part, he's been okay. He's not like set the world alight, but he's been all right. He's been fine. He scored some big goals in the Champions League as well. Obviously, the Champions League final, but even other games, he scored some big goals. But I just think he's kind of like a 9.5 or a number 10 rather than a striker. And I don't think he's a traditional number 10 in the sense of a Kevin De Bruyne or a Bruno Fernandes, where it's chance creation above everything. I think he's more of a German style number 10, like a Thomas Muller, and less so to like a Jamal Musiala, where they operate best when they're attacking the space.
Potentially, I don't know. He strikes me a lot like similar to Dele Alli, to be honest.
Yeah, that's another one, Dele Alli.
In terms of his stature. The main thing I worry about Havertz is I know he's technically good, but he's not technically secure in my opinion. He's not a player that I really trust to keep it ticking. And I think one reason our midfield was so good last season was because all 3 midfielders, Partey, Xhaka, Odegaard, would just keep it ticking, man. So that is obviously what I worry about a little bit with these signings. Obviously, I've said to you about Rice. I get it. Like, I get he's going to be a pro. He's going to be a leader in the dressing room, and he's going to be like he's going to do what he's asked, isn't it? Like, he's going to cover the ground. He's going to break up play, drive forward. Obviously, what I'm worried about there with him is he going to progress the ball like how Partey progressed it? Because Partey, I mean, if you watch clips of Arsenal last season, him and Zinchenko, the way they were progressing it in midfield last season was unbelievable. And yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens with Zinchenko, whether he remains a starter or not. Because as I said, if him and Partey are both out, then yeah, I feel like there's a lot of burden or potential on Odegaard unless Rice becomes like a great ball progressor. I mean, when I watch him for West Ham, he progresses it slightly more than he does for England. When he plays for England, he doesn't really. I don't know what happens, but I always think he's
I
quite.
think that's yeah.
Um,
I think that's instructions more than anything. I
but
also think
why
with
would that be? I don't get why that'd be instruction. Like, as in, I'm not asking my DM to always break the
mm,
line. Like, you've got to be conservative somewhat, but there's certain passes where it's literally, the centre back is literally 5 centimeters away from you. You're passing to him. That's just it's a waste of a pass, in my opinion. And I think
yeah, Karen.
too much for England.
I think for West Ham, he has the responsibility of he has to be the main man, whereas I think for England, it's kind of a case of stop counter attacks, keep it very simple, and just don't lose the ball, especially in international football as well, where sometimes the sideways or the backwards pass is better than the forward one, which sounds crazy. Whereas in the Premier League, the forward pass is normally the best option because it's so high intensity. In international football, it's just kind of keep the ball, keep it ticking, and eventually you'll wear the other team down. A lot of international teams play like that. I think that's why the Timber signing as well, I think for me is so interesting, because I think if you play him and Zinchenko, you can kind of double invert and you can have Rice as sort of floating around and trying to win duels and start attacks and stop attacks, rather than having the burden of sort of progressing the ball. So I think them two, with how technically good they are, they can do that. So it kind of just gives you more options. I think Thomas Partey, I'm not a huge fan of him as a player. I don't think he's good enough in duels. I think he loses the ball from his blind side a bit too much. Whereas I don't think I've ever seen Rice do that. I think Partey, when the game's in front of him, is great. But in terms of strikers or attacking midfield players pressing him from behind, I've seen Bruno Fernandes do it to him. Who else have I seen do it to him? Against City, I've seen Gundogan do it to him as well, where they come from sort of behind him and then they nick the ball off him. I don't think Declan Rice ever does that because of his size, because he's so big. It's impossible to get around him. Whereas Partey, you can get around him. And these are the small details I think Arteta will look at.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Like, I don't quite agree with. I agree in the duels he's not as good as a Rodri or a no, maybe as good as Rodri, but not as good as Rice.
Not as good as Rice or a Casemiro either, perhaps.
No, probably not Casemiro. Yeah, but
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like since that before that West Ham mistake, it was flawless season, one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, and it was like, Arsenal fans as well have to have some shame because it was like, putting him in the conversations, rightfully so in my opinion, because he was very good. And then since that, and then a couple of mistakes in the City game, it's completely, the tune's completely changed. I don't really get that, but it is where it is there. Keelan, so with the signings, right? How do you see us actually lining up next season then? Like, what do you think the lineup's going to be?
Not really sure, because obviously as it stands, our squad's like very big. Xhaka sort of talking about leaving, Partey sort of rumoured to leave as well. So when we don't actually have like better midfielders, obviously, like forwards, we've got about like 6 potential starters, and then Bellingham as well. There's a lot of players, but I think I think defence. I think that starts the same next year with Ramsdale, White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Zinchenko. Midfield, obviously DM. I think at the moment I want to say I think Partey will go. I think Xhaka might stay, like it more so like if a club's not interested in him for whatever reason, because kind of just seems like talks of him are sort of slowing down a bit. I'm not really sure, to be honest, but then a lot of people obviously saying Havertz and Odegaard, and I think like guys like Vieira, he was like sort of 30 odd million. I think that's the sort of player why to bench. I don't think we're paying 65 million for Havertz for him to sit on the bench. So I think the only way Havertz fits into that team is like with what Louie said, and what a lot of people are proposing with Rice in DM, and then Odegaard and Havertz in front. And then sort of Martinelli probably rotating quite a lot with Trossard on that left wing, and then Jesus and Saka. So I think just that midfield's all that really changes from the way. I think Timber's just sort of general backup, like sort of almost like identical replacement for Tomiyasu, but just an upgrade on him, I guess.
Yeah, interesting one because that's a completely different midfield. But I hear it. If you're trying to replicate the City thing, I hear it. But I don't also agree with just throwing two creative players in the centre mid. You know, they've got to be both Kevin De Bruyne and David Silva. Like,
because with Havertz as well, he's not really like a creative player either. Like, obviously, you compared him to like Dele Alli. Like, his fame came from him being quite a physical. Like, I know he scored a lot of headers. For one thing, he was quite a physical player. He wasn't really like an intense player. Like, he's not to be going in midfield, like especially midfield at Arsenal. Like, that's an intense role. He doesn't like strike me as the type of guy to like, just not give everything on the pitch, but just to literally go reds from running. Like, he just doesn't really strike me as that sort of intense player. And then like you said, he's not really technically secure. I'm not even sure if he's that creative. Like, I don't really see the sort of logic in putting him in midfields. Sort of, like Joe Linton's the more sort of common example, but that was more sort of as like, a defensive sort of midfielder. And it was a bit random, and I don't really think, I think there's a reason that sort of transition doesn't happen tons. And I just, with regards to Havertz, other than the fact that we bought him and that's the only position he fits in, like, I struggle to see how any fan, like any Arsenal fan at all, was thinking, "Oh yeah, we should sign Havertz. He'd be a sick midfielder." Like, I don't think that's crossing many like scouts' minds or anyone's really minds when watching him.
Yeah, no, I do agree. It's with that one, it is literally just a let's wait and see because like we can't say we didn't have these same feelings about Aaron Ramsdale when he came in. Like, you know, we had Leno in goal, who we all Arsenal fans seem to love after that terrible season we had, and where he was like our only good player for Aubameyang, and then Ramsdale comes in is an instant upgrade. So we'll see if Havertz is an instant upgrade tactically and both like in terms of attributes on Xhaka if he plays there, but he could also play up front as well, which wouldn't make that much sense to me because I don't see what he'll give you over Jesus. But just on you know what, £200 million signings, both English centre midfield players, Rice and Jude Bellingham. Who has got the better deal then? Lou, I'll come to you first. Real Madrid or Arsenal? It's a tough one.
Really tough. That's really tough. I'm gonna say Real Madrid simply because I do think Rice can possibly be the best DM in the world, but I genuinely think Jude Bellingham, with how good he is and how talented he is, he's at the right club in terms of winning trophies. I do think he can get to the level. This is going to sound mad, but I do think he can get to the level of a Zidane or someone like that, where, you know, we look back in 20 years' time and see him as someone who is unbelievable. You know, how many 19-year-olds can you say have played like what? He's played like what, 140 games already?
More than that.
Yeah, and like he's every single team he's played for. I mean, Birmingham in the Championship, which is like for all measures a tough league, especially as a 16-year-old. He looked great in that league. He's looked really good in the Bundesliga, which is obviously a step up. And I think there's the time to step up for Real Madrid. I think he's shown that he has the personality just in taking that number 5 shirt. I do think he's a football romanticist in terms of just taking that number. So, you know, I think they've got the better deal in terms of he can go on to be one of the best ever. But I do think I probably think Rice improves Arsenal more at the moment. But I do think 5 years down the line, Jude Bellingham, we can look back on at Real Madrid as one of the best players in the world, let alone in his position.
Yeah, and in 5 years he will only be 25, so he'll still have another 5 years after that as well to prove himself.
Mental.
Yeah, what a prospect. Keelan, what do you reckon?
I'd probably. It's weird now because obviously just with Real Madrid, I think just with their midfield and how it is at the moment, I'm just sort of hesitant to see how everyone starts and obviously how that affects sort of development and whatnot. I just think with regards to sort of spending that money, like it's just almost like when you're spending that much on youth, it's like there's not real much point. Like if sort of proven sort of players are going for a similar price to that, it's like you're investing for a player to get better, but you're paying the price now of how good they get in the future. So I'd say, sort of based on that, I'm more swayed to say Rice, based on the fact that like Rice could easily sort of elevate us to a trophy sort of next year. Whereas with Bellingham, obviously Real Madrid, like he could still help Real Madrid to a trophy, but I'm just sort of his skill set's a bit less defined. Like I haven't been watching Dortmund, but I'm just I struggle to sort of get back him as much as a player. Like obviously playing in Germany, I don't notice him as much. But I just feel like to Real Madrid that sign, he's just there just so another club can't have him. And like saying that, I can't see him starting more than like 30 games next year. Who knows? But just sort of especially after seeing how like sort of Tchouaméni and Camavinga have been treated, I'm just a bit sort of confused over sort of what Real Madrid are doing at the moment. So I want to say Rice because I don't see Rice sort of ending in League Two where he is now. Whereas with Bellingham, I think there's a slight chance things could just go badly for him. Like,
yeah.
Do you actually think he doesn't start more than 30 games next season? I get your point in terms of like their midfield, but I think Modric, I know people like, but his levels have dropped. Like if you speak to any Real Madrid fan, I know Faisal and SDS obviously says his levels dropped this year. I think Cruz as well, his levels dropped significantly, and I think he's a different position to Camavinga and Tchouaméni. I think those guys operate better deeper, whereas I think Bellingham's better as attacking, kind of like a third man runner in midfield. So he's kind of like a Pogba or someone like that, where he's not a DM, he's not really an 8. He's kind of like he's a third midfielder basically, where he will attack the box. And I think in terms of the goals they're going to miss now with Benzema, I do think he can because he's such a goal threat. I do think he's going to start most games. Whereas I don't think the others offer that much goal threat.
I was gonna say obviously Valverde's in the mix as well, and the guy he's like 24. He's still quite young, and he's been good for them. But I just feel like I'm not sure how amazing Bellingham's sort of development will be, but then that Real Madrid is one of those clubs that once you're there, he can easily retire there with lots of trophies from that, so he doesn't have to worry about his next move.
Yeah, I hear that. If I was to pick, I'd say it's tough because Rice, as you said, Keelan, he's defining what his skill set is. Like, you know where he's going to play. With Bellingham, there's still people who think he's a pivot player. There's people who think he's a third man midfielder. But yeah, I think you would have to say probably Bellingham, only because I think that he's got a lot of flaws in his game. I think he still needs to work on like his like taking in the ball under pressure.
Yeah, back to goal, he does need to work a lot.
Yeah, I was watching clips of him earlier, and he completes a lot of dribbles, but a lot of them will be him receiving the ball from goalkeeper, heavy touch, and then he's like taking on a few players to get out of the press. Whereas a player like a Modric will just literally take one turn away, and obviously they're not that sort of player, so I think he should play further up. But you also see the great things he does against Senegal, where he gets the ball, beats 2-3 man, passes it to Foden, goes straight from defense to attack, scores. And there's not many players I can't think of many players in the world who can do that. That's that Yaya Toure.
Yeah,
I can't think of it. So
Zidane.
Yeah, I think the ceiling is higher for Bellingham. I'd say that. But yeah, in terms of who's got the better deal? So yeah, it's tough. But I'd have to say, I don't know, man. I might even switch.
Yeah.
I think it's even actually. I'm gonna fence it there. But
yeah, there is like the one player. Bellingham's completely unique in the way he is, but I do think the one player who I've already compared him to is Zidane, and I do see the comparisons in that sense because I think obviously Zidane, as he got a bit older, obviously was technically with his back to goal was a lot better, but Zidane was never like a pivot player, and I think because these guys are tall, you kind of want to stick him in the pivot. That's kind of like tuned in our minds, stick him in the pivot. You kind of see a number 10 as like a smaller, kind of more intricate player, whereas you see like a number 8 or a number 6 of someone taller. But I think the fact he is so tall and he's got long legs actually helps him as an attacking midfield player because he can knock these defenders off the ball or these midfielders off the ball or whoever. And that's what Zidane had, where he took his. It wasn't always like he did have an amazing first touch, but sometimes he'd knock the ball past people and dribble with it rather than doing intricate touches. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. I don't know. I just think Zidane technically was a mile above most players, a mile above Bellingham. So I get it though, in terms of the definitely similar sort of profile players if they're both used in that position. I am actually gonna go with Rice. I have reservations on both players, but I just think that Rice is like tactically, I think he's just a bit easier to manage. I worry the worry I have with Bellingham is that we've said this before in the chat, Louis. He's going to end up like Pogba, not really having this fine position because he's not. He's got pivot qualities, but he's also got 10 qualities, and yeah, like I don't know. I've seen a couple games so far. He's only 19, but the game against Chelsea, like, got absolutely phased out. To be fair, game against France as well in the World Cup. I don't know. Like,
I thought he was all right that game.
Right, but
it's hard because the way the French played, they were sort of on the edge of their box for most of the game, and a player like him, he kind of needs space.
Yeah, I think at the moment he's quite a moments player. That's what I'm trying to get at. Real Madrid love those in a way. Ronaldo,
they do.
Obviously good, but like they love that sort of clutch player. So we'll see. I do hear Keelan's point though about him possibly having to fight out in midfield because they speak so highly of Camavinga. They speak so highly of Tchouaméni, who's kind of become a rotation now. So a lot of midfielders. So Bios has signed a new contract. He seems to be well for them now. So I think first season, yeah, he might have a struggle in his hands, but 100 million, surely you're signing that player to.
Yeah, I think those guys play a lot deeper than Bellingham do as well. I think Camavinga is kind of like a 6 or an 8, and Tchouaméni's a 6. I'm hearing from Real Madrid fans that Valverde might have to be doing shifts at right back because he played really well on the right and at right back when he has played there. So I'm hearing that, and even potentially on the right wing as well. So I think those guys, there's other roles that kind of suit them just as well. Whereas I think with Bellingham, I think he's the only one who does what he does in that team, whereas the other guys kind of are similar or can play in different positions.
Yeah, nah, fair enough. We're gonna stick with midfielders. Obviously, we've seen Maddison's gone to Spurs. We've seen that Szoboszlai has gone to Liverpool. McAllister's gone to Liverpool. So all these centre mids were available, but Man United really were. It was Mason Mount, the one they wanted. Louis, I'll come to you first. Why Mount? Like, why Mason Mount over like a James Maddison in particular? But even there's the rest of those. Why do you think? Yeah, Ten Hag's gone for Mount.
Do you know what? I've always flip-flopped on Mount. It's a weird one because I do really rate him, but I do think he's shit at the same time. If you get what I mean. Sorry to swear, but I think the way Dutch managers are is they like goals spread across the whole pitch, and I think Ten Hag's kind of shown that this season. And I think Eriksen and Bruno have both played as 8s. Eriksen kind of can play a little bit deeper, and so can Bruno. Both of them can do that, and I do think Mount can do that as well. Now, the thing Eriksen really lacks, this is statistically and also just watching him, is defensively, he might as well not be there most of the time. We've seen that against Arsenal, in terms of when you guys got the ball, you were just cutting through the midfield. Obviously, no Casemiro as well, so that doesn't help that specific game, or both games actually. But Eriksen was just getting bypassed because he's basically a cone when he's not on the ball. And that's one thing where Mount does excel. I think off the ball, he's fantastic. And I think Ten Hag wants to kind of use Bruno and Mount in the pockets, which is going to require more progression from the back line, which isn't an issue with Shaw and isn't an issue with Martinez, but it is an issue with Varane and it is an issue with Wan-Bissaka. Obviously, it's an issue with De Gea, but Onana is pretty much the perfect keeper in terms of that. I think if there's anyone who can spray the ball from the back into midfield, strangely, it's a goalkeeper in Onana. And I do think they need another centre back. I think Kim would have been perfect because technically he's very good. So I think after goalkeeper and then striker, I think centre back's next. Whether that's next summer, this summer, or January, I think that's next in terms of outfield after a striker. And look, Ten Hag wanted Mount. He wanted him over everyone, and that's everyone's known that. It's funny because there's obviously the Dutch link there in terms of Mount played in Vitesse. When I think Ten Hag might have been their coach actually, or he was Ajax coach when Mount was there. But I think Mount was very very good that season. He got in the team of the season for the Eredivisie. So look, he's admired him for a long time. I think he kind of wants to play the dual eights. And yeah, I can see it, but I also do think there would have been better players there. Mainly Frankie de Jong, but I think that's both kind of sailed. And I mean, to be honest, if it isn't Frankie, the rest of them I have more reservations about anyway. So either of them I would have had doubts about. He's the only one who I think would have fit perfectly. So I'm happy with Mount. I'm happy with Mount. I do think maybe those funds should have been spent elsewhere, but listen, man, it's who the manager wants, and we're always saying about backing the manager. So if that's his number one target, that's his number one target.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Keelan, what as a observer of that signing, what do you make of it?
Yeah, like just a lot. So many other better options. I think they sort of could have went for. Like he's not a player that you've seen in previous seasons sort of solve the problem that United have. It's kind of oh yeah, maybe he can sort of fill this hole and fix that problem. Which I just think, yeah, for that sort of money they are spending on him, I just think there are sort of better options out there, and it's kind of just like I guess yeah, same with Havertz, almost just a bit. It's very simple scouting, which could be sort of construed as lazy scouting. But obviously, yeah, like if Ten Hag has sort of seen him before and does sort of admire him as a player, and he wants him, like fair enough. But it just I know with Mount and Havertz, it seemed like if you're sort of going into the summer, they were two players that you kind of look at Chelsea, and with the amount of signings they've made, you kind of look at all their forwards are that they've got to get rid of a lot of these guys. So just the idea that like, oh yeah, the person that Chelsea happen to want to sell happens to fix sort of an issue at Arsenal, an issue at United. It's just doesn't quite like fully sit right with me. But yeah, like I'm sure Ten Hag's watched Mount and his team's watched Mount a lot more than I have, and I think yeah, it's not a ridiculous fee for Mount, who has had very good moments in the Premier League. He's very good at set pieces. Yeah, he's very technically sound. It's just yeah, another player that sort of hasn't quite found his position yet, and just kind of just getting moved all over the pitch.
You say
That's
there's
an interesting.
oh,
Carry on, Dodzi, carry on.
No, go because my point is another point. You want to touch on his point? So.
Yeah, I was going to say your point about set pieces is actually really interesting because I can't remember the last time United scored from a set piece. So there's that layer as well, which I hadn't considered, which is also important. And I also think as well. No, I also think you throw me off my point there. What was I going to say? You go first, and I'll think about it again.
I was just but first of all, you got Bruno on. I thought Bruno was like sick at set pieces, but is he not, or
not really, to be honest? No, I don't like him on free kicks. Corners, he's alright on corners. I'd prefer him not to take them. I prefer him to be on the edge of the box. But yeah, I think he's at the moment him and Shaw Shaw definitely from in terms of a left footer is the best got the best delivery, but in terms of a right footer like an in swing or an out swinger with a right footer, I think there's no one really who can put the ball in the box other than Bruno. So Mount is an expert at that.
Yeah. Now, Keen, I was just gonna say you said there's better options out there. Any come to mind?
Yes, I think yeah, McAllister would have been one. I think with sort of Bruno as the more attacking midfielder. I think, yeah, like a more any midfielder that's sort of more balanced than Mount. Yeah, sort of obviously, yeah, Caicedo. Obviously, yeah, a big fee is sort of being warranted for him. But then, in Man United, I think when you sign a guy like Anthony to fix a problem for 100 million at right wing, you should fix like any other problem on the pitch. You should give the same amount of attention to it. So I think they should yeah, going off topic, but just when you sign a guy like sort of Anthony, you kind of want to be able to sign a guy like that in every position, in which sort of seeing Manu sort of struggling for money now. But yeah, away from those two bait ones, no, to be honest. Yeah, so basically just with Mount, I don't think he fixes the issue. I see him like as a very similar player to sort of Sabitzer and Ericsson, sort of two players that they had last year, which sort of were sort of attacking midfielders when they're younger. They were both very sort of technically gifted, sort of in that role. And just in terms of playing alongside Bruno, it didn't really work. I'm not sure if they did play much, but I don't think they did. So I'm assuming it didn't work, hence why it didn't sort of fold out. So I just see Mount as a proper like similar player to them two, which they sort of had last year, and they want to improve on that.
Yeah, I mean, I get both sides. Like Mount, he's a willing runner. He's obviously technical, but I don't think he's as technical as Ericsson. It's a weird one with Mount in terms of his techers. You know, like I've never loved them. Like I don't think he's technically consistent, but I think he's got the good technical moments in him.
He strikes the ball really well as well, I have to say. He does like
here
in
and
terms
there.
of.
I think here and there. I wouldn't say he's a. I don't know. I'll say he's got similar strike level to Odegaard.
Yeah,
I would say Odegaard's
Nah, I disagree.
I think for me, in saying that as well, is I think he knows his ability quite well. Like he's quite a humble football player in terms of. I think he's quite limited in how. Like he doesn't do that much, which is like extraordinary, but he doesn't like fuck up that much. And I just think he knows. Like he's a smart player.
Yeah. He is. We'll see with that one. I mean, I expect more signings from Man United. Man United is definitely a better environment right now than Chelsea, so I expect them to be a little bit better.
I have one more point when you're done on Mount.
Nah, go on, man.
Yeah, I think it says a lot. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but like every manager Mount has seems to like him. In terms of Southgate, Lampard, Tuchel, Ten Hag wanted him. There was rumours Klopp wanted him. Obviously, Arteta wanted him as well. We know that. Ornstein said that. So, you know, these top managers don't rate you if you're not a very good footballer. And that's three teams who kind of have different systems as well. So he's obviously, these managers look at him and think tactically he can adapt to different situations and different systems. So I think there's a point on him as well.